Welcome back to Queensland Raceway. We are preparing for races 2 and 3. This is the second one of the weekend, and we turn it all around. Reverse grid as the cars roll on their warm-up lap, heading back to the grid. Let's take a look at the Mitsubishi Fuso starting grid for this one, because it's all turned around. And at the front, you will find Marcus Marshall and Steve Ellery. And there's a pretty interesting topic on this because, well, if we still had our Zinger hot topic, this would be it. Reverse grids have been on everyone's lips this year. And Neil, as we roll through the grid, and you can read it for yourself and see where everyone is, V8 Supercars Australia, since Hidden Valley has had its half-yearly planning meeting, if you'd like to describe it as that, their review meeting, and V8 Supercars Australia has said reverse grids are no more as of the next round at Oran Park.
That's right, Lee. Pros and cons, of course. A lot of debate about this topic. I guess in some ways the industry can't stand still. I think it has helped vary the grid for race 3 at different events this year, but at the recent mid-year management review of the category, the feeling was it was unsuitable going forward after Oran Park, certainly at places like the Gold Coast, and reviewing the previous 5 rounds of the championship, there's probably a feeling that the costs have been too high. But I think we're still going to see a very fascinating contest today. Lots of good guys scattered through the field, including right up here at the back, people like Russell Ingall, Craig Lowndes, James Courtney, career best for him yesterday. Jason Bright, new set of brakes on that car. They're working to fix the problems that saw him run off at turn 4. Garth Tander, outstanding job yesterday. Remember, Jason Bargwanna triggered the safety car, and Todd Kelly, spoke to him earlier in the morning, and he was just beyond frustration that he could break another gear lever in that car. So they've rectified that. He's got a lot of work to do in this one. So the second last reverse grid perhaps ever in V8 Supercar racing. One here, one at Oran Park, then we move on to the Enduros, and no more reverse grids for the remainder of the 2006 season. Races 2 and 3, as per normal in the 3-race format. They're 140 kilometres each, 45 laps here at Queensland Raceway. And look at that magnificent crowd in the background. Max Wilson, he's up into 14th in the championship now, and a top 10 result. He finished where he started yesterday, and this man here, Stephen Richards, made some good progress as well. Ready for the reverse grid here at Queensland Raceway. Marshall fairly even. Paul Morris had a great jump on the inside, heading down into one. Look for him in car 67, but it's Marshall for Paul Cruikshank Racing, takes the lead into turn 1. Oh, trouble already at turn 1. Will Davison's gone around. That's Jason Richards touring the paddock. Stephen Johnson as well. Notice they're all heading for the grass verge. Lowndes is there near. Lowndes is that last car, it looked like, behind Stephen Johnson. Gary Rogers' car tripped up in the middle of it all. Looks like they may have all escaped. Somebody else is beached, though. That'll be a problem, which will trigger a safety car if the car can't be removed from that spot. Turn 3. Big problem there for Paul Dumbrell. Massive damage on the left front.
Mate, have you got any steering at all?
And the answer from Paul.
But I'm trying to keep the left-hand wheels on the grass so I don't damage the tyre. Yeah, okay, no worries. I can see you doing that.
Good thinking from Paul Dumbrell, who is wounded. That car is wounded on the opening lap of race 2. Mayhem down at turn 1. Will we see the safety car deployed? Marcus Marshall is the race leader. I think that car's been removed, Lee, so I don't know that that's now going to be an issue. So we come round to end lap 1. A scattering of the pack at turn 1 off the start. That changes everything. Where are they all? Marcus Marshall leads, Jose Fernandez second, Steve Ellery is third. Lots of gaps all around, which you'd expect after a scattering. Paul Morris, Steve Owen, Andrew Jones, John Bowe, Mark Scaife, Cam McConville, Warren Luff. That's the top 10. And a good gap for Marcus Marshall. Here comes Scaife up the inside, and he'll make this move stick. Andrew Jones is the next one on his list. That was Brad Jones that Scaife came out underneath off turn 2. Steve Ellery running a bit wide there. This is Paul Radisich in front of Greg Murphy. I think that's Ellery touring on the exit of turn 3. There's still a lot of dust up there. You can see it in the peripheral vision on Greg's car on the exit of turn 5. It's the sort of thing you've got to pay attention to in a reverse grid race. You need to read the road. You need to read what's going on up ahead, not just what is happening off the end of the bonnet. And the experienced guys are looking out for this. And this is Paul Dumbrell, finally made his way back into pit lane.
Come on, Jack, just take it easy going in there. Just need to get those stands under, blocks under and stands under, guys. Just get it going in the air. Have a look at it.
This is Max Wilson's WPS Ford, heavily damaged at the front.
Yeah, no, we're going to put it on Jackson, take it out the pit lane.
Yeah, that's going to ground both those cars for a substantial period of time. Fastest lap of the race so far, Mark Skate, 1:13.6. He's up to 5th. Let's see whether the Zinger replay reveals any of the story. Now, someone got into the back of Will Davison, it seems. But need to look at that again to fully understand. And then, of course, down the order, it just scatters everybody. Cars go every which way. Russell Ingall's car was up in the air at one point there. He had James Courtney behind. There's Max Wilson. All the damage is already done on his car. And that's Paul Dumbrell off to the left in the Jack Daniels car.
And as you can see, that was Craig Lowndes we were on board with. The other better electrical Ford was Jamie Whincup. That was the one that toured around on the outside.
I think that could have been either Andrew Jones or Jason Richards that touched the back of Will's car. I think it was Jason, car number 3. But whether he also had somebody tucked in behind him pushing remains to be seen. There was someone right in behind Jason as well.
Lee Holdsworth was in the mix there as well, wasn't he?
Of course, that's the advantage of the onboard cameras that each of the cars has, that the stewards are able to access at the end of the race. They can download the digital data. They can also marry it up. Not only the pictures, they can marry the data up, and then that'll help them unfold any mysteries if there are any there.
So here's your order. It's Marcus Marshall, the former champ car driver, who leads the way from Steve Owen, Jose Fernandez, and Mark Skaife has just got around Paul Morris. So Morris has now dropped back. Then Andrew Jones, John Bow. The fast guys are coming from the back. On board with Murphy.
Skaife's further improved the fastest lap of the race to a 1:13.1. Marshall, Owen, Fernandez, Morris, Skaife, Jones, that is Andrew. Whoa, it's all happening, isn't it?
Radisich right up the inside. You're on board with Murphy, and he's gone right around the outside of both of them. Great move, Greg Murphy.
Bits flying off. That was the driver's side mirror from Paul Radisich's car disappearing off into the sand.
And Radisich has got a problem on the front right. There's smoke billowing from that car.
It's folded the guard or the front splitter a little onto the tyre. So remember, there's a compulsory pit stop, so they've got the opportunity to look at that and rectify it. They may even pluck it off. Darryl?
Paul Dumbrell, just quickly, while they're trying to repair your car, the damage looks quite severe. Do you know what happened at the start of the race there?
Yeah, well, one of the GRM cars went up quite hot into one and then got into the back of a few other guys and spun another car around, and also pretty much nearly sort of avoiding it, but someone nailed the back of me and just drove me straight into the front of them. So unfortunately for all the boys and the Jack Daniels team, it's a bit of a tough start, but we'll get back for sure.
Hard start, Paul.
Thanks, Daz.
Yeah, it hasn't been, in comparison to previous weekends, it hasn't been a great weekend for Paul Dumbrell.
Steve Owen further improved the fastest lap of the race to a 1:12.7 last lap in the Autobahn entry. He's currently second in car 55. Been a quiet weekend for him so far. Can be a very difficult track to set up for this one, which we detailed at the top of the show. There are a couple of odd combinations here. Turns 1 and 2 are so quick, and yet this midfield stuff is relatively slow, and you must make your car work across all the speed phases. And certainly often what makes a car great in a high-speed corner like 1 or 2 makes it ordinary in a slow corner like 3 or 6. And that's the real trick here. Add to that the bumps that have appeared in a few places, and you've got yourself a very awkward combination to set up the ideal race car.
Just keep an eye, guys, on our race leader, Marcus Marshall, with Lincoln's Tools Falcon. It does seem as though, particularly through turns 3 and 6, there is some fluid leaking from that car. The small amount of smoke that seems to come from it clears on the straights, but it does seem as though there's a leak of some kind from our race leader. Also, too, some good aggression that you've pointed out from Greg Murphy so far in this race. Funny little story for you. The Super Cheap Auto team just prior to this race have downloaded from the net a photo of a cougar and stuck the cougar on the inside of the passenger door just so he can see it's got its fangs exposed. They've seen the new promo for the movie Talladega Nights with Will Ferrell, and in that promo they use a cougar to keep the driver motivated and fired up, so they're trying to do the same with Murphy today.
It's working. It's absolutely working. We go back on board with Greg. You may have seen about a lap ago, Craig Lowndes structured a very nice move on Jason Bright, and that allowed Todd Kelly to come through as well.
Here's Murph. He's now 10th behind Warren Luff in the Fujitsu entry.
This is the Lowndes move.
Craig Lowndes. This is turn 6.
Wright's gone the high side, trying to go around James Courtney, and Craig says, I'll take this.
Gotcha.
And Todd Kelly followed him through. Todd Kelly's made some good progress, 31st to 18th. Rick Kelly has gone from 23rd to 13th, and Courtney 27th to 17th, but that means nothing. Here they come for their compulsory.
Marshall leads, Steve Owen, Scaife's third, Morris, Jones, Fernandez, Bow, Luff, Murphy 9, Winterbottom 10, Rick Kelly. He's in 11th, so they've brought Bridie in. Courtney in reasonably early too.
Courtney lost the spot yesterday in the opening race where he had to wait for safety reasons in pit lane to avoid contact with Rick Kelly.
It was one of those days yesterday where a lot of people got fouled up on exit, but look at that then, they all slotted in cleanly without any interruption to anybody's race. It's weird how that works sometimes.
In terms of where he entered yesterday for his compulsory stop, Mark Winterbottom lost 6 positions from the point where he entered to where he exited again. So that was a little bit frustrating for the Ford Performance Racing driver. All on board with the defending champion.
And he's currently in 14th. Tucked in. Oh, he's battling there with Holdsworth. And he goes to the pit lane. So Lee covered him on the right. Russell decided not to go on with it and come in now, grab another set of boots. Marcus Marshall continues to lead. Scaife now second. New fastest lap of the race for him, 1:12.4. Then Steve Owen, Paul Morris. Here's Murph.
If you're new to watching V8 Supercars, this is one of the features of the sprint races.
Go.
Every driver.
Don't push it. Go.
Wait. Is he having trouble getting it mobile, or is it just a question of the traffic? I think he just had to wait for a spot to find a gap.
Yeah, slide off, mate. Go.
Oh, close. Yeah, he waited. That was the right thing to do. It's frustrating. It's hard for a race driver to curb that natural aggression. But Russell Ingall made the right decision then to give way to Rick Kelly. And Greg Murphy slots in behind Russell.
Just to finish that point earlier, every driver must stop for a compulsory change of tyres within these sprint races. Look at the margin Kelly's got over Russell Ingall.
Lee, I know that people's, the concern by teams here in the pit lane is being trapped by a potential safety car, but congestion in pit lane really is having a huge effect, and we saw that in race 1 yesterday. Some guys, when there's a lot of traffic in here, struggling to rejoin. Russell Ingall, one of them just a few moments ago.
It makes you wonder, Greg. We discussed this last night after race 1, whether sometimes there's not an advantage in just being a little patient and playing the risk game, which Stephen Richards did. We're watching him here very effectively in Perth.
Go.
He manages to get out ahead of the Jack Daniels Commodore. Had a word with the HSV dealer team prior to today's race, and some suggestion that the stall from Garth Tander yesterday may have been attributed to too much throttle, Neil. And as you know, when you're on the speed limiter here in pit lane, they need very judicious use of the throttle, only minimum throttle required.
You're right, Greg. Just watching that rejoin there by Garth. So close between he and Russell Ingall. They're nose to tail through turn 2.
Stephen Richards, compulsory pit stop out of the way as he charges on in his Jack Daniels Holden. 9th to 6th yesterday. That puts him in good shape for the weekend. And Greg Murphy just finished out of the top 10 yesterday in 11th, so that put him in a more promising position than in previous rounds.
Rick Kelly's on target to do the fastest lap of the race here. He's just done a couple of very quick sector splits. He's in 19th at the moment, sandwiched between Jason Bright and Jose Fernandez. Greg made the point before the break about Garth yesterday just stalling the car after it dropped off the jacks. You may be fooled into thinking, gee, that should be a pretty straightforward process. But when the pit lane speed limiter is switched on with these cars, they're limited to 40 kilometres per hour. But the cars have got next to no drivability if you try with too much enthusiasm to use excessive throttle percentage to get them mobile. You've got to squeeze the throttle only in the first couple of millimetres of its travel in a very low percentage of the overall throttle availability. So it's a question of coaxing it really, Lee. You've got to blend the right amount of throttle and slipping the clutch to get the car mobile. And it's certainly much, much easier to stall the cars in that configuration than, of course, when you've got no pit lane speed intervention, because then you can just drop the clutch a little more aggressively and get the wheels spinning and just slide back into the pit lane. But for safety's sake, we do not do that anymore.
This is Lee Holdsworth. He had an eventful race yesterday. Just spoke with him before the beginning of this one, and he said, wow, pretty interesting yesterday towards the end of the opening race. I virtually had no front brakes. I had to finish the race just on rears only. Rick Kelly has
nailed the fastest lap of the race, a 1:12.08. He's 17th at the moment. He's got his teammate Garth Tander behind, Jason Bright in front. Scaife leads, hasn't taken the stop yet. Marshall, Owen, Morris, Winterbottom, Bow, Radisish, Kelly. That is Todd. Then Luff, Bargwana, Canto, Johnson, McConnell, Courtney, Lowndes. That's the top 15. There's the reason why there's a problem for Lee. He and Jason Bargwana getting tangled up down there between 1 and 2.
Just a little update for you guys that Rusty mentioned earlier with Marcus Marshall's car. The stewards are watching that car now, trying to find out if it is leaking any fluid onto the track. I asked Paul Cruikshank from the team, and he said they're not sure if it's tyre smoke or a rear hub seal on that car. They're going to try and identify it in the stop.
Cameron McConville, James Courtney, Craig Lowndes.
Garth Tander has done the fastest split to the second sector now in his pursuit of his teammate Rick Kelly. Here's Cam McConville, 13th. Courtney, 14th, then Lowndes. They're all chasing Stevie Johnson. Yes, Garth has now done a 1:11.9, new fastest lap of the race in 18th position.
McConville did a great job at the previous round in Darwin of making something out of nothing and finishing 9th for the round. This is his teammate Greg Murphy getting squashed on the inside.
Yeah, but Fernandez was coming back at an angle that Greg wasn't able to cope with. He couldn't turn the car into nothing, couldn't make it through the inside there, so in an effort to avoid, he's had to loop it around, so that nails his progress, and he was going quite well at that point. Scaife, Marshall, Morris, Winterbottom, Bow, that's the top 5. Todd Kelly 6th.
If you missed our race last night, the opening race from yesterday, it was on after the AFL last night. There was a tremendous scrap up front between Garth Tander, Jason Bright. That kind of went away towards the end of the race. But this man here, Craig Lowndes, chased the guy that he's chasing again now, James Courtney, who achieved his best ever V8 Supercar result of top 3, finished 3rd. And this is a track, this is the first time James has been back to a track that he knows. This is his home test track. Every other circuit this year he has had to learn from scratch because of his absence from racing in Australia for so long. Went overseas as a teenager in go-karts, and then we've detailed his great successes overseas in open wheel formulas and then in the Japanese GT series. So he's on a steep learning curve, but it's really coming around for James Courtney now in the Gelwin Ford.
And Lee, we've tracked down the man who will partner him in the upcoming Enduros. We're at that stage of the year, Glenn, where we're looking forward to Sandown and Bathurst, and you'd be pleased with how your partner in crime, James Courtney's, going at the moment.
It's going fantastic, and it's great to see the turnaround it's been this weekend. The cars are really strong, so that's a good sign for Sandown and Bathurst, I've got to say. It's been a great race so far, I've got to say.
Recent weeks have been good for you. We detailed overnight the testing this team has had. I know practice wasn't quite perfect on Friday, but it's come good for the race, hasn't it?
Yeah, but that was always a strategy, not to put new tyres on them throughout the practice session. So naturally the guys in front put new tyres on. So that just shows the pace of the cars that they have. And let's face it, it is their home test track and they should do well here. So at the moment they're doing great.
We're looking forward to seeing the former series champion behind the wheel of the Stone Brothers Falcon come Sandown and Bathurst. Thanks, Glenn.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. We really are. Glenn knows this track well now because he's based on the Gold Coast and he does plenty of miles around here as well.
James made good the manoeuvre down the inside, only just though on Cam McConville, and Craig Lowndes went with him. That'll release those two a little, and away they go.
Said to Rick Kelly before, James Courtney put a good move on you at that corner in turn 1, in race 1 yesterday. And Rick Kelly said, I saw him coming, and I thought, good luck to you, mate, if you can pull it up. And he said he did, as we see Rick put the move on McConville in the very corner I'm talking about. And Rick said, that was a great pass. Good luck to you, James. Well done if you can pull it off.
James has now done the fastest split in the first sector, 24.7 in this race, as Lee Holdsworth climbs out. There was a report of some oil smoke with that car. Not surprising when you see the amount of damage around the front, so there's clearly some issue relating to the damage. Mark Scaife leads, 5-second margin over Marcus Marshall. Morris, Winterbottom, Kelly, Radisish, Luff, Bargwana, Canto, Johnson. That's the top 10. These guys that we're looking at the moment, 13th and 14th. Here's Cam. Got Rick Kelly behind him, then Jason Bright, Garth Tander, Russell Ingall. Incidentally, Greg Murphy's back into 25, position 25 after that turnaround at turn 4.
Finishing a point on the Gary Rogers team just recently since Darwin's Hidden Valley round. They've announced their other 2 endurance drivers for Sandown and Bathurst. Philip Skyfleet and Greg Ritter will be in the GRM colours.
Takes about 38 seconds on average to transit the lane and do your stop. So where does he come out in relation to James? It'll be an interesting one. But always hard to know what it all means until everyone's fully processed here. Marcus Marshall returns to the race lead. Paul Morris, Mark Winterbottom,
Good job, mate.
Todd Kelly. There's Steve Owen in the Autobahn car. He's 11th at the moment. And Scaife has reinserted in front of Courtney. We're showing Mark in 10th, Courtney 12th.
From this point on of the season, we normally start talking about endurance races because it's only 2 rounds away until Sandown. Steve Owen will be paired with Tony Longhurst in that Autobahn Commodore. Courtney, Lowndes, and then the 2 Toll HSV dealer team Commodores that have been very strong this year, and they continue to lead the team's championship, as well as Tander now being 20 points ahead of Lowndes in the driver's title. Winterbottom in.
He was unfortunate yesterday when they completed an efficient stop.
Go, mate.
He couldn't actually get back into the fast lane without having to give way to traffic, and that hurt him, hurt his result. Dean Canto, rears only for the Repco Valvoline entry.
They had a water problem with that engine yesterday. He said it was overheating. He said it got up to about 115 degrees.
Yeah, it's bad.
And he said at 120, it's game over. So he said we got very, very close, but they've rectified that problem overnight. James Courtney gets a little wild as he's fending off Winterbottom, who's just returned to the circuit.
That helps him a little bit in the sense that...
James, that's Winterbottom just come out the pits behind you on fresh tyres.
Paul Forgy just giving James an update. That at least splits James and Craig. Craig, of course, seizes the moment to try and slide up the inside because he doesn't want to get in a situation where he loses touch with Courtney. But we've seen already this year that Winterbottom's got tremendous speed. He's come alive in the 2006 championship. That team have really given him a great car, and he's driving it well.
On board with Lowndes, let's enjoy the ride.
Getting up to about 215 kilometres an hour on the approach here to turn 6, down to a slowest value of about 80 k's, second gear, then building pace back up. Courtney's just skipping away slightly.
Holdsworth, that's obviously disappointing for you. You know exactly what's happened to the car.
Yeah, for sure. We were running in a pretty good place there, but I had a bit of a bengal on that first turn and folded the bonnet up. And from there on, I just lost power every lap. And towards the end there, just before I pulled in, I couldn't even pull 6 down the back straight. So, yeah, it was lacking a lot of pace. So I just thought I'd bring it in, but it ended up having a bit of smoke inside the cabin. So it's best that we just park it, I think.
Possible to get it ready for race 3?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I'll be having a big go in that race.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Darryl.
The Toll Boys gang up. Sorry, Darryl. The Toll Boys are ganging up on Lowndes. He's been hung out there. And that is Rick Kelly through. Now Tander's coming to attack. There he is on the right-hand side. Lowndes has lost 2 positions in 2 corners, but he fights back.
Run me off the road.
And Craig's actually on the radio talking while he's dicing with Garth.
Yeah, we watched it all happen. Just got to get our head down, keep nice and smooth and calm.
That was a bit bizarre. He was pausing in his conversation as he was doing the gear changes on the run into turn 4, but he could be attacked here again. He's going to lose another spot.
Come on.
They are roughing Lowndes up, and he doesn't like it. Both Toll Boys through. Daz, sorry about that, mate. Finish off what you have to say.
Just a quick update on Max Wilson as well. I had a chat to him, and he was saying that the first turn incident that he was involved in, he said, I had nowhere to go. I don't know how the incident started. He actually asked me how it all happened, that team working on the car trying to get it ready for race 3.
Yeah, I imagine it must be confusing in all that mayhem. Here we go. Courtney's got a margin now over Winterbottom, but these two orange, white and black Toll HSV Commodores are coming. They've got some speed. See just there too, as we watch the Zinger replay.
Pretty clean move.
I think Craig was complaining about this portion, wasn't he?
Well, certainly there was a tiny touch at the end, but Rick did it easily. He got down the inside cleanly, made a good move, and Craig was complaining. It's funny, the alternate conversations between the two teams. Craig was complaining and Campbell was just saying, no, take it easy, and then he was worried about this move here where he felt that Rick was running him off the road. And then on the flip side of that, Eric Pender was saying to Rick, great job, mate, good driving, nice and clean. And not surprisingly, it split in the views across teams and brand lines. A really good stoush. And then Garth makes a pretty good move here because he's not that close coming off turn 5, and then he feints out to the left and then does a diagonal and does a classic move late on the brakes, sacrifices some speed, and he sliced up the inside.
Incidentally, that corner, the run out of turn 3 where Rick Kelly got past and then he and Lowndes went wide. You may remember last year, Jason Richards of Tasman Motorsport, that spectacular rollover. Well, that curb that helped elevate him and flip him has now been removed, and that's nice and flat. And if you watch it here, as they come out of this corner, all of the cars are driving over that curve now. It's nice and flat. And
it used to be the defining thing that made sure that you stayed on the racetrack there, and often when you hit it, it really upset the car. And of course, nobody ever imagined that we could see an incident like we saw last year. And quite wisely, for safety's sake, that's now been removed. This battle between Bright and McConville continues. That is 12th and 13th. Order at the moment: Morris, Todd Kelly, Stevie Johnson, Mark Scaife, Warren Luff, Steve Owen, James Courtney, Mark Winterbottom, Rick Kelly, Garth Tander, the top 10. Murph's been on the radio, just didn't pick up the information, but a little bit unsettled, a little bit unhappy about some aspect of the car. Looks like he's getting a bit of pressure at the moment from Russell. Morris has got a 2.7 second margin over Todd Kelly.
Wright's been able to just string a little bit away too from Cam McConville. It's 11th and 12th at the moment as we ride with Ingle, who's in 13th.
There's been a bit of other radio chat too.
Here doesn't last that long, but you're plenty busy, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's, well, I just explained it before, I guess. It's that odd combination of a couple of very slow corners, a couple of medium speed and a couple of fast ones, and you've got to get the right measure of all of them. You'll be quite patient around here in lots of places, and that was a really good indication on board with Russell. I think he's got it done now, yes. Just pops it into second gear very late in the stop there. Cam didn't put up too much resistance. Probably, you can generally sense when someone around you has got pace on you. It's smarter to just give them the space and get into your own rhythm than try and drive your car outside its natural rhythm, where you risk being off the road, either making a mistake yourself or being turfed off the road by somebody else. When we're on board with Russell, as now Todd comes in for his compulsory stop, they did plan to run that car long. You could hear how long you've got to wait with the throttle here in quite a number of the corners. You're just hanging on the loaded side front tyre for a long time, waiting for the understeer to just die down a little, and then very carefully pick the throttle back up. So Todd takes his stop and slots in just behind Jason Bright. So that's in 12th.
Plenty of drivers on the radio at this stage of the game, Neil. Barry Ryan, I think it was, from from Jack Daniels Racing has been speaking to his driver, Stephen Richardson. He said, hey, look, I know it's not ideal what you've got at the moment, so perhaps Stephen not happy with the balance of car 7, but he's encouraging him to press on. And the reason for that is that Richards is being absolutely hounded by Jason Bargwanna in the WPS Ford. And Jamie Whincup has been talking to his man, Ludo Lacroix at 888 Racing. He's complaining of a little excessive, not too much, understeer at turns 3 and 6, but the biggest problem he's facing is oversteer through 1 and 2.
And this is how he did it. Under brakes, turn 3, got up the inside, cleanly up the inside, but then when they got down to turn 4, Owen actually whacked him in the back pretty hard and dislodged the bumper, and here it is. And I would think that that won't go down too well in race control, because there wasn't really a lot of need for that. And of course what happens is if the bumper flaps too much, you can actually end up having to be drawn into the pit lane to have it removed. And Peter Wallerman said to us at the last race in Darwin, they're going to pay more attention to that kind of stuff in the future, keeping an eye on who dislodges what and why. But good little stoush nonetheless. Replay on the Zinger replay here between 1 and 2, showing Todd Kelly getting up the inside for 10th on Jason Bright. Meanwhile, by the way, in case you're wondering, Stephen Johnson just recently completed his compulsory pit stop. He was leading the race and he reinserted back in 20th position. Winterbottom now trying to come underneath Steve Owen.
There's former world boxing champion Kostya, who's having a little bit of a spell at the moment and enjoying his time at V8 Supercars as a guest of WPS Racing. Owen and Winterbottom hard at it.
Not a good spot for Winterbottom to be, because that'll expose him to the toll cars. He's trying to crisscross, but if you leave too much of a gap, we know that the 2 orange and black cars have got pace and they'll take a slice for sure.
And Lowndes has been able to tag onto the back. Tander is ahead of his teammate Rick Kelly, and on the inside of Winterbottom. This is what he did to Lowndes, and he's pulled it off. Rick Kelly, his teammate, comes back. Almost contact between the 2 toll cars. Winterbottom is hung out wide, and Lowndes wants to capitalise. Instruction to Tander, go get Owen. 10 laps to go, more than that actually, 15 to go.
Oh, Lowndes is in here as well, and Winterbottom left a big gap down there at 1. He was very lucky to scramble back and regain his ground. He's going to be a bit vulnerable here if Craig gets the gas on early coming out of 2. He'll have a lunge at him down here at the hairpin. Good racing all this. Scaife leading 16.5 seconds from Courtney, Steve Owen, Garth Tander, then Rick Kelly, Mark Winterbottom, Craig Lowndes.
Think about the tremendous progress made by guys like James Courtney, Garth Tander, Rick Kelly, who all started right down the back of the field, and Craig Lowndes for that matter.
The significance of that graphic is this will be the starting order if they finish like they are for race 3. So front row would be Tander and Courtney, row 2 would be Bright and Lowndes, Rick Kelly would be on the 3rd row. Of course, it can change, we're not done yet.
Nice to see the Autobahn Commodore racing at the front as well, albeit a reverse grid race, but Steve Owen is a very talented driver. And let's see how long he can handle the pressure from Garth Tander, who has been the fast man all weekend. He and Scaife have been the 2 quickest guys. At the moment, Steve Owen holds on to that 3rd spot.
Marcus Marshall's finally retired from race 2. His team in that mystery smoke that we thought was coming out of the bottom of that car was correct. Rusty did say it was a leak, and the team confirmed that they changed the gearbox in that car overnight, and the gearbox has finally run out of oil. They've got a leak there.
Tander gets him quite easily up the back straight to turn 3.
Yeah, Steve got a little crossed up between turns 1 and 2. He had a bit of oversteer down there and made a slightly slower exit. But Garth's been massively quick all weekend at turn 2. We saw how strong he was yesterday when he blew by Jason Bright. Off 2, good corner exit speed, quick in a straight line, strong under brakes. They've got it all going in terms of package. So he's off.
I like that shot at turn 2. You see him coming around, you see the cars moving, they get a little bit squirrely, a bit sideways. And look at how much he's gapped Owen already. So Tander now sets out after James Courtney.
Great stuff, GC. P3, mate. Think about your bars and fires. 14 to go.
Matt Nilsson, engineer on the radio, just reminding him of adjustments and the adjustability within the car to control the anti-roll bar mechanism on the front and rear of the car to keep the balance at the optimum. Make sure that the brake balance is right also. You can alter the percentage of either front brake or rear brake in a V8 supercar. Fuel is burning off. which means you can't carry quite as much rear brake as you may have started with. So they just ease it forward ever so slightly.
This is the race leader, Mark Scaife. Meanwhile, Rick Kelly gets by Steve Owen. Winterbottom's lining up for a shot. And that red HRT Commodore in the background behind this man is Todd Kelly.
Average fuel burn here is around about 1.92 litres per lap. 45 lap race, they'll have started with around about 100 litres, so it's got something in the order of 75, 80 kilos of fuel on board. So the behaviour of the car certainly changes as that fuel load comes away, and presence of mind is important because you need to constantly retrim the car to make sure that you keep up with the changing traits in the grip levels. And in a business where a tenth of a second is king, you can't afford to just suddenly fall asleep slightly and miss any one little area in the car. And that's why the engineers are reminding the drivers frequently. Because when you're in the car and you're busy and you're hot, you're preoccupied with people all around, as this group will be, the last thing on your mind is sometimes reaching across to the levers that are down by the left-hand side near the gear lever, which control the anti-roll bars, or usually the brake bias is up on the front right-hand side of the dashboard or down by the right-hand side of the seat. Kelly now having a look at Lowndes. I think he could be under him. Here he is.
Standby. Pit crew roll, standby.
Oh, and Winterbottom and Owen are rubbing panels as well.
Peter.
And Kelly's got a shot. The run.
It looks like a rotor or something's exploded on the front left-hand wheel. I'm not sure if it was Wincup's car or Lowndes' car, guys. You'd know by the monitor there. And there was pieces of rotor flying everywhere as they went down the pit straight here, flying over the pit wall.
It must be Whincup because we're on board with Lowndes. This is a huge stoush.
And Steve Owen has maintained his position. Good driving. Winterbottom was unable to execute that move. And now here comes Kelly in his brand new car. And there is Jamie Whincup. Darrell just detailed the problems. He's struggling to try and get his way back to pit lane. Back on board with Lowndes.
Safety car board, so we just got to direct ourselves.
There's a bit of a grass fire on the infield as well.
Okay.
So there's the SC confirmation. The boards are out, the flags are out. There's been some debris flying down there. Let's hope everybody's okay. Mark Scaife's 17-second lead is about to evaporate, and that'll re-energise this little battle as well. Scaife, Courtney, Tander. Here's the problem. Front left wheel's parted company. Darrell, your read on it is the rotor's exploded.
As he limps back down the lane.
There's two grass fires, in fact, and that's the reason why. It's immediately opposite our commentary area, opposite the race control area. There it is, there's one of them, and there's another one that I just heard race director Tim Schenken advising officials of. So obviously we can't continue a motor race with that issue. This is an unusual problem.
Safety car yesterday, safety car today. And here is Jamie Whincup stranded, 888 Ford. Race over for him.
So Darrell was reporting that a piece of the brake rotor is shattered in there. Hard to see from that angle. Certainly a very unusual thing. There's the second fire.
So the WPS Chrysler safety car has been deployed as the 888 boys go to work.
And that brake disc has gone, boys. Darrell's call or read on it is spot on. And I can tell you that about 15 laps ago, Jamie was on the radio to Ludo Lacroix. He'd had a minor off somewhere on the circuit, and he felt that there was something wrong in the left front brake. So he'd reported it for a little while. They checked temperatures and the like. But, man, I've never seen this before.
Yeah, very unusual. If he went off the road, then the chances are he picked up gravel, which may have damaged the rotor, could have damaged the brake caliper. There's that a bit of a brake pad. I think that's actually a bit of a brake pad. So, I mean, obviously, once things start to explode, there are all kinds of bits and pieces going every which way.
But as you just saw, the teams line pit wall, and when stuff starts flying, it's very dangerous. So some very lucky people. The safety crew, as you can see, fire crew are there to put out those two small grass fires. And Steve Owen And Todd Kelly came together, and another safety car came out to rescue Steve Owen's car. Meanwhile, it's Scaife, Courtney, Tander, Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly, the top 5. This is the run to home with 6 laps to go.
Yeah, now that the field's recompressed, it's on again. We saw some wild stuff in the last few moments, culminating in that second triggering of the safety car involving Steve Owen. This is coming out of turn 3, where Mark Winterbottom, Todd Kelly, Steve Owen were disputing. But this bit worries me here, where all of a sudden Owen starts to move to the right and trips up Winterbottom. I thought that might have been a little bit naughty, and I reckon there could be some words over that afterwards. And then that displaces Winterbottom. Then Todd Kelly has a run between 4 and 5. He goes charging up, trying to make a move into turn 6, but ends up planted right square back in the middle of the rear bumper of the Steve Owen car, and then off Steve goes. That triggered the safety car. I think Todd's going to be in strife over that one, but the whole thing involves high heart rate, drivers getting angry and aggressive, and off goes Steve Owen. The problem for Steve there, he didn't quite have the car pace to run with those guys. He was a bit out of rhythm as well. He hasn't had a strong weekend, but he was racing pretty effectively. But wow, that stuff in the midfield on that lap was pretty wild. Now look at this. 888 have repaired the front left corner of Jamie Wincup's car. They'll get him out and they'll get a point or 2. Well done.
Should be applauded. That is an outstanding effort from that team. Normally in a situation where it looks like the day's done, but you never give up, and Jamie will rejoin right near Steve Owen. Scaife has put almost 9/10 of a second on James Courtney in that opening lap from the restart. And Courtney is fending off Tander, Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly. The next forward in line is Craig Lowndes. And then it's Morris and Bright. Zinger replay. What's happened here? One of the Fujitsu Fords. Ooh, big lock up and straight on. I think a bloke sitting very close to me at the moment did that once here.
Only I was pointed the other way. It went down there backwards, which is probably a little less scary. You don't know what you're going to hit.
Courtney and Tander. Ford versus Holden, Stone Brothers versus Toll HSV.
GT will be pretty quick here. He's been rocket fast through turn 2 all weekend. Right here, he carries great speed through and off the corner. So this will be a mighty battle with only a couple of laps to go. And Peter Wallerman, the investigating and prosecuting officer, made it clear, together with Colin Bond and Tim Schenken earlier this weekend, that when they get to the final 2 laps of the race, all bets are off in terms of what you can do in terms of covering your race line.
This is fabulous to see Courtney racing at the front.
And previously there'd been no definition. It was just, the quote was a few laps from home. Now it is 2 laps from home. So 2 laps from home, you can drive down the inside a little and make the other guy do the hard work. So it's on.
Yep, we're in that zone, aren't we? We are in that zone. And although Scaife leads the race by 1.2 seconds, he's not really in the mix for the overall weekend. The overall weekend is about these 2 guys. The toll man, Garth Tander, at the moment has a 6-point lead over James Courtney if they stay as they are. These 2 will comprise the front row starting race 3 this afternoon.
An interesting psychological situation here between both. You know, Garth's got the points lead in the round so far. James has made a big recovery this weekend. James needs a solid result. So does GT, although he leads the series. He's had a couple of moments during the year that have frustrated him. Now, that was what Garth wanted to see. James just getting a little wide through 2. He's going to make this pretty easy down the inside. James tried to resist. Not much he can do about it, though, in that position.
And he knew once he went once, you're not allowed to go again. And he had to let Tander go through. There's a scrap on further back too between Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly and Craig Lowndes.
And the reality is that Garth's got the quicker car at the moment. I'm pleased that that didn't end up in a situation where James and Garth got together and one or both would be losers. So good move.
And after big learning curve, steep learning curve, frustrating start to the year, I'm pleased for that half of the Stone Brothers garage that they're now starting to get some results. Paul Forgy and his men with James Courtney, a 3rd yesterday. He's running 3rd again today. That's good work. Here's Lowndes. He's further down the order in 6th, but it's been a very solid race for him as well. Had an arm wrestle with the 2 Toll HSV Commodores earlier. Now he will just settle in that position. Gives him valuable championship points as well. He's trying to take the fight to Garth Tander at the top of this championship.
It's on here between Rick and Todd too. These guys have raced pretty closely to each other on a couple of occasions this year.
The boys from Mildura, if you're not familiar with them, it's the younger one in front. Rick Kelly leads his older brother Todd. And that's Jose Fernandez in the Fujitsu Ford.
Is that the same spot? Yeah, that's to get away with it twice is a bit of a miracle. He rejoins at turn 2. 1.9 seconds, the measure between Scaife and Tander on the last lap. Here's the focus of the race. Battle now for 4th and 5th between the two Kelly boys. Garth Tander 2nd, James Courtney 3rd. That's James just disappearing into the distance. Craig hasn't quite got a response for them at the moment. I wonder whether he's saving some rubber for race 3 or whether he just does not have the car pace right at the moment.
More of the same coming up. It's exactly the same distance for the 3rd and final race today. Round 6 of the V8 Supercar Championship, and we're on our way home. Scaife leads them by 2 seconds, and he is just 3 kilometres away from his 6th race win of the year.
I tell you what, this is a story of, and I know that the safety cars help by compressing the field, but the cream's risen to the top.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, Scaife, Tander, Courtney, Kelly, Lowndes, that's heavyweight. Those guys have done, all of them, collectively, an outstanding job to thread their cars. The other interesting thing on this final lap is we've not seen any command from race control yet about what happened between Todd Kelly and Steve Owens, so I suspect that that'll go to a deeper hearing after the race and they'll try and figure it out.
And there's Russell Ingall, 4th in the championship. He's fighting at the moment to stay in touch and gather more, fighting with Winterbottom, and behind him it's McConville. And pressing through, here he is, the Super Cheap Auto man. Top 10 round finish in Darwin, and he's going about his work very nicely at the moment. Cars aren't ideal, but they're doing the best they can. And Scaife comes out of the final turn 6, down the straight. It's a reverse grid, but it's still a victory. That is win number 6 for 2006 for Mark Scaife. Garth Tander, the series leader and weekend leader, grabs 2nd and more valuable points. And well done to Ford's James Courtney, who grabs his 2nd, 3rd position of the weekend.
So Tander's got 190 points. That'll put him in pole position for race 3. Courtney with 182 points does stay on the front row. Just double checking my numbers here to make sure I've got it all straight.
And that was John Kelly there, the man with the mustache, shaking the guy's hands at the Toll HSV dealer team. He's the owner of that team. And his boys did a good job, not only his sons, but his other boy as well, Garth Tander, to chase this man home.
I was going to talk to you about it before, but this windscreen's bad. That thing of Marcus Marshall is taking oil out of it everywhere.
And that's the reason why Marshall, who was the race leader, ended up as a non-finisher.
And you can't do anything about it, because if you turn the wiper on, all it does is smear it. You can't really see it from that angle, but obviously it's bad enough for Mark to complain about. So a race win for Scaife. That was a pretty entertaining motor race, wasn't it? Garth Tander in 2nd place, James Courtney 3rd. So 2 Holdens, a Ford. Then the 2 Kelly boys, Rick and Todd, putting on a great show for 4th and 5th. Craig Lowndes in 6th. Paul Morris, good performance for Paul, car 67. Then Mark Winterbottom, what a wild ride for Mark. Jason Bright, his teammate, in 9th, and then Russell Ingall 10th.
But as the VB scoreboard shows you, the positions they made from their starting position on the right-hand side, Tander to come up 27 positions. There's only 31 cars in this field. That was an awesome performance. Very well done. Tander is the man of the moment here at Queensland, that's for sure. In front of this huge V8-friendly crowd. There's Mark Scaife, 6 race wins this year. The closest is Lowndes with 3. Although it wasn't an ideal result in the first yesterday with 21st position, that will be some more valuable points for him. Not as many points as you get in races 1 and 3, but none the same. And there's Tander, a 1st and a 2nd this weekend.
Just a directive then from race control across the network, Lee, that car number 88, Jamie Whincup's going to have time penalty added because he had to shortcut the track to get it home. He came off between 3 and 6 and then came into the pit lane, justifiably so, but he's not going to be able to take advantage of it.
Tander, top of the class this weekend, and when we come back, we'll hear from him and the other main men. Stick around.